My name is Parker Felterman, and this is my ascot. This is my mom's new puppy, Gumbo. Being from Louisiana, that's Gumbo, Gumbeaux. He's a Yorkshire Terrier who, of course, being from Louisiana, likes the Saints, and who just turned 1 in January. This is my dad. He's a 57-year-old car wash owner who enjoys fishing, poker, and also likes the Saints. And this is research conducted by MIT showing that most survey participants would rather save Gumbo's life than my dad's because my dad, similar to the figure near the bottom here, is a registered felon. You see, with the increasing importance of artificial intelligence in automobiles, MIT sought to integrate morality into machine learning. Now, the survey, nicknamed the Moral Machine, provides users with a set of scenarios as to if they were driving a car, who would they rather hit if it was unavoidable? With 233 countries and territories providing over 40 million scenario responses, the results, at least to me, are startling. And a list of whom the driver would prefer to save, the criminal character ranks at the very bottom, right below dog. Now, my dad served 3 years in a federal penitentiary for 4 counts of mail fraud or money laundering by unlawfully shifting clients' money into separate accounts as a stockbroker just a few years before my birth. It didn't take an MIT survey for my dad and many like him to learn this lesson, that if you break the law, you have no place in this society. Now, this is not, of course, unique to my family, though it is more likely to happen in my state. You see, Louisiana has been called the prison capital of the world, having a higher incarceration rate per capita than any country in the world, 13 times that of China, though, well, Louisiana is closely followed by Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and actually a good deal of United States have higher incarceration rates, that is, inmates per capita, than any single country. Now, an electorate demanding harsher prison sentences and lower felonious classifications combined with a profitable business venture clearly makes for a formidable political and economic machine that many felons are unable to help themselves out of due to disenfranchisement. In fact, University of Houston's Dr. Brandon Rottenhouse explains that the United States is one of the few modern countries to still have post-release voting restrictions. That is, felons are unable to vote probated or paroled, and when you have a state like Louisiana with such a high incarceration rate, well, it doesn't feel too much like democracy. And in case you're wondering, the other countries are Armenia, Chile, and Belgium, the latter only being if the sentence is over 7 years in length. So clearly, there are those out there who believe it's fitting for those who break the law to be stripped of basic constitutional rights such as voting. However, not only is this an act of extreme injustice, it's also just simply not the case. When a judge hands down a sentence, he or she will announce an amount of time needing to be served, maybe a fine, or an act such as community service or placement in a drug treatment program, right? Nowhere is disenfranchisement listed as part of the punishment. Now, there are historically 3 reasons cited for incarcerating a lawbreaker: isolation, deterrent, and rehabilitation. Now, isolation, or keeping the bad guys away from the rest of society, is perhaps the most self-defeating. If we recognize this person as fundamentally bad, and we lock them up to keep them away from the good, law-abiding citizenry, why would we ever let them out? Deterrent can perhaps best be summarized by Russian philosopher and writer Fyodor Dostoevsky's quote that without God, all would be permissible, meaning we need a system of punishment in place to keep citizens in line. In other words, crime equals opportunity plus desire, and that desire is meant to be curtailed by potential consequence, i.e., no reasonable person would, say, steal a penny if it meant death by firing squad. This is a graph showing the murder rates in states with and without the death penalty. As seen, states with capital punishment actually have consistently higher murder rates than states whose maximum punishment is just lifelong prison sentences. And that leaves rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, the criminal justice definition, is a convict's reintegration into society. Not punishment, not retribution, and not revenge. Rehabilitation is about helping the lost rediscover their path. Dostoevsky, speaking on these lost, says, quote, "It is these unfortunates which must be treated in the most human fashion. This is their salvation and their joy," end quote. So let's say, just this once, one time, that the system is actually right. Well, clearly, my dad wasn't meant to be isolated since he got out. He wasn't deterred since the crime was committed, so that only leaves rehabilitation. But how can we simultaneously say this person, my father, is rehabilitated, is reintegrated into society, and yet the law hurts him on job applications, loan applications, credit reports, working in finance ever again, working in insurance, becoming a public notary, or even fulfilling his small dream of serving on a jury? The one person in the world who actually wants jury duty. Well, 25 years. Half of his time alive has been spent under the law's restrictions. Now, my dad, who loves the outdoors and often speaks enthusiastically of hunting, was unable to teach his two sons how to shoot a rifle. Though I'm not a big fan of hunting, my brother is, and since my dad's not allowed to have a firearm in his, and by extension our, home or car or boat, the two have to plan hunting trips well in advance, making sure they have an adequate number of guests along and 2 cars available, one for the guests and the gun, the other for my dad. My dad and brother can never hunt alone for that reason. But paralleling the lifelong legal repercussions for his non-violent crime are the social repercussions. Our old pal Dostoevsky's maxim states that a society should be judged not by how it treats its outstanding citizens, but by how it treats its criminals. Now, I would like to extend that maxim to include criminals' families. You know, I never understood growing up how my parents would invite this wide range of house guests over, ranging from coworkers to priests, and yet the act was rarely reciprocated. And I don't think it's because they were bad hosts. Similarly, throughout grade school, I'd be growing up and would make these schoolyard friends and would time after time be surprised whenever they'd ask their parents if I could stay over, and the answer was resoundingly no. Now, of course, I was disappointed and confused, but hurt. I mean, how could I be? After all, they didn't know me, nor, as it turns out, did they know my father. But they thought they did. They thought they recognized this mark upon his chest. A special meeting even needed to be called and character witnesses brought forward for my dad to be able to coach Little League baseball for mail fraud. So clearly this crisis is not just a matter of laws and regulations, it's a byproduct of human nature. We're all responsible for it. You, and you, and you, you too, and me. Because the law, and by extension, the criminal justice system, is a direct result of constituent wishes. Meaning it is this very society that these felons want so desperately to reintegrate themselves into that prohibits such action. So what is the solution? Not just for my dad, but for the 23 million other Americans unable to fully rejoin society due to mistakes sometimes made over half a century ago. Because not only does the United States have the highest incarceration rate, it also has the lowest rate of rehabilitation. Well, because it's up to us. Every member of society needs to change this guilty even after prison verdict. But is this a defeatable mindset? Well, the Association for Psychological Science gives this fascinating take on snap judgment science. aka judging a book by its cover. Now, their studies show that in just 50 milliseconds, that's 8 times as fast as the blink of an eye, in 50 milliseconds, one person looking at another can judge that person's sexual preference, level of extroversion, and level of intellect. Well, at least they think they can. They may be wrong on every front, but more importantly, they think they're right. And my dad's mark upon his chest is a cover many do not bother to read past. Now, I'm not saying that every prisoner is a result of the system's failings. I am saying that the current rehabilitation process is not only unsuccessful, but harmful, and it's not just systemic. I am saying that this cannot be blamed on some far-off entity. I am saying that for every felon denied a job for being a felon, every life ruined post-release, every inability to re-assimilate is not just a result of laws and regulations. Laws and regulations do not prevent people from holding jobs usually. People do. But in our desire for control and power, we fashion ourselves judge and jury, and so we become the executioner. The judges of our society judge those who've already been judged, preventing the assimilation that these people, like my father, so desperately wish. Only we can change it through constant, consistent, conscious effort. Thank you.